All right, everybody. It's an eventful day. First of all, welcome to the Pump Fake. Jared Bailey here, and if you know anything about my content or watch me, follow me on Twitter, anything, you know who the person to my right is, Jason Aponte. Ton of stuff with 49ers Gold Mine, Sprint Right Option podcast. It's good to see you again, buddy. How are you?
I'm doing great, Jared. Thanks for inviting me on. And what a day for you to pick, right? This was before the request of the trade, actually, that you sent this text message. So I'm
Yeah,
going to ask you to stop texting me to come on your show because the next time you do, it's going to be that Nick Bosa is going to be requesting a trade.
that's fine with me. Hey, if Nick Bosa wants to come to Pittsburgh and be on the other side of TJ Watt, I would pay good money for that.
And that's the Pump Fake podcast. Nice to see you guys. I'm out of here.
But yeah, man, like it's something that's been brewing for a little bit. There's been all kinds of reports, all kinds of speculation, but Jeff Darlington reporting that Deebo Samuel has requested a trade out of San Francisco, which is eventful, to say the least, noteworthy. But now it comes down to, okay, will the 49ers accommodate that request? Will there be any sort of extension? What are the exact reasonings behind it? What are your thoughts on just everything going on right now?
Go in the room, Averly. I'm sorry. Yeah, as of right now, let's break down the word request in its literal definition.
Mm-hmm.
A request is something that can be accepted or denied. Why on earth would the 49ers just say, well, he wants to be traded, that's it, when they have all the leverage? I mean, you have a player who's under contract who, if he decides to hold out due to the new CBA rules, is going to cost himself his entire salary if he doesn't show up and get fined for training camp. And if the 49ers like, they can franchise tag him 2 times as he has no 5th-year option. So for me, this trade, it signifies that he is growing impatient and wants to make the money that he feels he deserves. And why not? I mean, he plays 2 different positions, and it seems like the 49ers just want to give him wide receiver money. And I think his biggest point is, well, I play wide receiver and running back. There needs to be a little bit of an increase because of that. It's just more a desperation play at this point to, one, have the 49ers field a ton of offers or calls, right? Who knows who comes calling? Maybe the Jets say, hey, we'll give you 10 and 38. And at that point, that should at least get the conversation started, right? Like that's a good place to start. You don't accept that off the bat. But 2, also maybe put the 49ers in a spot where they make a rash decision. I don't think they will do that at this point. And I don't think that Deebo has much leverage here. So while 49er fans are waking up today or scrolling through Twitter and finding out that their best offensive player has requested a trade, it doesn't feel good. But you have to understand there's certain things that would impede any sort of imminent trade unless the 49ers were so intent on getting rid of him, which I don't believe that they are. And I think they are ready to dig in a little bit here and say, we're not going to accept your trade. Like if the 49ers don't trade him after day 1 of the draft, then he's not going anywhere. Because you don't trade him for a late first or early second to start, and you don't trade him for a future first. If you're going to trade Deebo Samuel, because something gets blown away, you get a complete blown away offer where the Jets are like 4, 10, and 38 or something like that. At that point, I don't know how you can say no to that. There's not many players that I would say no to that for. And if he's so intent on leaving, he gets his money from the Jets. The Niners get 4, 10, and 38, which is completely not going to happen. I'm just trying to give you the crazy offer that it would take. As of right now, this is just a desperation move and trying to see if the 49ers do something rash. I would not suspect that they do something rash unless they know for a fact that they can't repair what's going on right now with Deebo Samuel.
Reminds me of the situation in Pittsburgh with Le'Veon Bell, where he wanted, some compensation for, playing a lot of wide receiver as well. Do you think that in Deebo's case, do you think that he would sit out an entire year?
I don't know. Now that's the question. Now, here's the thing. When Le'Veon Bell did it, if he was able to come to an agreement back with the Steelers could have just waived those fines and done that.
Yep.
The CBA prohibits that. So what happened when the new collective bargaining agreement was agreed upon was the owner said, okay, you guys get to smoke weed again, but you can't hold out at all. So we give and we take.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reason that was put in place, was for situations just like this. It does not behoove anyone to sit out unless you are so dug in your heels, so done with the situation that you know that you can get something done. In this case, I don't necessarily see that being the case, and it would kind of be foolish of him at this point.
Yeah, and now it comes down to, we talked about the offers. We can talk about the Jets giving away, their 3 biggest, assets right now. But in terms of teams outside of that could be interested, I tweeted out earlier, and I'm doing a piece for Sports Illustrated right now. There is another player on the 49ers roster who's been amidst a lot of speculation on when he'll get traded. If you're a team like the Carolina Panthers, who is in desperate need of a new quarterback, and why not throw in a game-breaking weapon in there as well? If the Panthers would want to maybe package that, get a Jimmy Garoppolo, Deebo Samuel type deal, hey, throw in number 6, Brad Graham, our mutual friend, saying Brian Burns in there too.
DJ Moore.
Okay, you know what? I think that Brian Burns and DJ Moore would lead to David Tepper being under a little bit of scrutiny. But, number 6 and Brian Burns, that's a hell of a start. I mean, they'd have to add on some more draft picks in there, too, for a package, including Jimmy and Deebo Samuel. But that's a team that I keep an eye out for.
Yeah, for sure. And okay, so again, that reeks of something you really can't ignore. And you wouldn't be able to ignore that for any player at this point. Think about the cap savings you would get by moving Jimmy Garoppolo, and you would get number 6 and Brian Burns. I think that definitely gets the conversation started. And that's one of the deals that I'm telling you is like, if Carolina comes to the table and says that, and you have to at least listen. Yeah. And I think that's what it's going to take, is something in that vein. And it doesn't necessarily have to match compensation or player, but it has to be something that is like a blown away offer. And I think right now the 49ers have that leverage and that luxury of waiting for someone to overplay their hand and maybe, send out a crazy offer.
It's just crazy how quickly this seems to have escalated. And in terms of, Deebo saying it's not about money, it's about this. Other people are saying it's about money, not about this. I mean, if you had to guess, what's the biggest thing where he would just come out and say, yeah, I want to be traded?
I think he doesn't want to wait around for this to play out, because the 49ers, while they have people under contract, they have a little bit of a history of making sure that it's done right before training camp. I think Deebo wants to get this done as soon as possible. And also, I think it's less about the usage itself, because the usage and the way he was used by Kyle Shanahan is the reason that he's so highly sought after, and why 30 other teams are trying to find a player like him, even though he's a one-on-one. But at the same time, he does want to be compensated a little bit more, because he's not strictly a wide receiver. I mean, he sells shirts that say wide back, so he's not concerned with the usage. It's about, okay, you want to do 22 to 24 million? That sounds like a standard high top end wide receiver deal. I am not just a wide receiver. You need to throw some more money on there for everything else that I do. And I think that's where you start to hear the numbers of 27, 30, those type of numbers. And I think that Deebo is justified in that. But again, there has to be some give and take. And there'll be eventually, if no trade is done, I think they're going to have to get back to the table and work through whatever issues they have. Where Kyle Shanahan will say, hey, listen, we'll take a little bit off you, and maybe we'll give you a little bit more as a wide receiver. There's got to be some sort of discussion that will happen, especially if nothing happens after day one of the draft. So I think that it's more that than anything. And I think it's more that Deebo knows how valuable he is. I mean, he dragged this team to the damn NFC Championship and almost damn near put them in the Super Bowl by himself, almost, it felt like. But I think it has to do with the way that he wants to be compensated, because he does more than Tyreek Hill. He does more than Devontae Adams in terms of all his flexibility.
How much scrutiny are John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan going to be under if Deebo Samuel is traded before Jimmy Garoppolo is?
I'm not certain what the DEFCON levels are, like in terms of what's worse and what's bad, right? Because DEFCON 5 is actually not bad. DEFCON 1 is like the worst. So whatever the worst one is, I think that's what it is. And look, let me say it like this. It's because 49er fans remember what happened with DeForest Buckner. Now you're talking about one of the most beloved players on this team, right? People love what Deebo does before the games. And I mean, this season that he just had was completely unprecedented in terms of production and how beloved he is by this fan base. It's going to get worse. People still will not shut up about DeForest Buckner. If you move Deebo Samuel, people are going to be upset. And people have been upset this entire time, blaming them. We don't know what's really going on. We don't know if Deebo is completely done with the situation. Maybe something happened. We don't know, right? You're speculating. Everyone's like, well, Jed and all of them, they're fumbling the bag. How do you know? How do you know? Like yesterday, now the timeline lines up. Adam Schefter goes on NFL Live and says, the 49ers have the deal in place that he wants. It's him. And I think he wants to leave. And everyone just says, well, Schefter was wrong, Mac at 3, whatever. He's just talking out. No. The 49ers gave him that. And they said, put this out there. For one, a little bit of damage control when this request does come out, which it's been in for about 2 weeks. And two, kind of preparing you for the idea that this is something that's being explored. I would be foolish to sit here and tell you that the 49ers are not exploring this option right now. They're not exploring the option that Deebo Samuel completely sits out, and they're exploring the option of Deebo Samuel coming back and eventually getting back to the table. That exactly what this front office is doing, is just right now going through all the motions and trying to figure out what's the best move right now at this point. And all of those things are on the table. Is it likely? I don't think it's likely, but it's definitely a scenario that you need to discuss.
And then JJ sliding in the comments asking this. I mean, who's out there to trade for Jimmy right now? I mean, that's the biggest thing that you and I and everybody else in the NFL media realm was speculating about is, okay, he's going to be one of these first quarterback dominoes that falls. It turns out he's the one who hasn't fallen yet. In terms of teams that are left, I mean, they're not going to trade him to Seattle. I'd be very surprised if we saw, a Donovan McNabb to Washington type situation there.
No, and Geno Smith signing lets you know where they're going. Like they're really gonna roll Lock and Smith.
Yep. Which, God bless Seattle Seahawks fans. I mean,
at least it doesn't cost them a lot. I mean, whatever. Yeah. It's good for their first round pick in 2085 because they don't have any more for that glorified linebacker. I'm sorry, keep going.
And you look elsewhere. I mean, I already mentioned Carolina. I think that's one of the few left that would make sense at this point, just because, would you rather have Jimmy Garoppolo or Sam Darnold right now? I know which one I'm picking.
I'd have Jimmy. I would have Jimmy just in McAdoo's offense because he's going to want to do those quick screens and things like that. Look, I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo has many deficiencies. 49er fans, obviously this organization is moving on because of the injuries and the limitations at times, especially when you need big plays from Jimmy Garoppolo. But you know what? Here, I'm going to throw something out there. The 49ers, they're going to hold on to Jimmy Garoppolo until somebody gets injured at training camp or something like that. And then that'll be the team that all of a sudden springs new that they need. Like a team like, I'm not going to I don't want to put any name out there because I don't want to have any bad juju, but a team that's a fringe playoff contender who loses their starting quarterback, doesn't want to roll with their backup. Well, Jimmy Garoppolo's sitting over there now for 1 year, right? You don't have to extend him or anything like that. You can bring him in for 1 year. He can be a baseline quarterback, which is what he is, and navigate you to some wins and maybe get you in the playoffs. So I don't think there's any fit right now because it's not Carolina or Seattle. Everybody either has a franchise guy or a plan in place, right? Like maybe the Giants don't have a franchise quarterback right now, but they certainly want to see what Daniel Jones has. And you're not going to trade for Jimmy Garoppolo without figuring out what you have with Daniel Jones and Brian Dabble. So there's quarterbacks that you can say, hey, Jimmy Garoppolo's better than this guy, but it goes against their plan. And that's the part that you need to remember, right? Like, when Washington had Taylor Heineke and, and then you found Pittsburgh, bringing in Trubisky, it's clear that they, weighed the risk reward and said, we'd rather stick with this guy who's going to be a baseline guy like Mitchell Trubisky with a little bit of upside with legs and not have to send any draft picks or pay him an exorbitant amount of money. So just because you think Jimmy Garoppolo is better than certain guys doesn't mean that it fits because their plan is in a completely different direction. That's why Jimmy's got nowhere to go.
Yeah, and in terms of, the 49ers holding on to Jimmy Garoppolo until training camp and whatnot, it wouldn't be – the thing that comes back to me would be the Sam Bradford trade to Minnesota after Teddy Bridgewater went down. That's the reason that Carson Wentz started week 1 against Cleveland that year. He wasn't originally slated to, but then obviously Teddy goes down. Minnesota is exactly what you described. A playoff team, went completely healthy. They trade for Sam Bradford to get the job done. So it's going to be an interesting ride, my friend. I'm looking forward to being on 49ers Twitter throughout the entirety of it. Oh, yeah. Look, man, this is – as an outsider looking in, I'm just kind of sitting back like the Michael Jackson popcorn gift, just enjoying every second of it.
Oh, I bet you are. Especially after we bombarded you all offseason with Jimmy Garoppolo gifts.
6 months of nothing but Jimmy Garoppolo in my mentions is it's catching up to everybody.
Those bozos.
But I'll leave you with this. If you had to, list some destinations that would make sense for Deebo Samuel, assuming that, there's going to be 30 suitors for him, 31 suitors for him. It's pretty well known. If you had to pick maybe 5 that would stick out amongst the rest in terms of a good fit and what they could give back in return, is there a few that stick out to you?
I mean, there's really only 2 because I'm only taking a top 10 pick this year because I want one of the top 3 wide receivers. Again, you are talking about trading something that Deebo Samuel. I am not taking a late first rounder to try and swing on Christian Watson and hope that one of these guys is anything close to what Deebo is when there's top 3 wide receivers in the top 10 that you can get. And I'm talking about Jameson Williams, I'm talking about Chris Olave, and I'm talking about Garrett Wilson. One of those 3 guys would get the conversation starting in the top 10. That's the Jets. The Jets are not going to give up 4, okay, because they're probably going to take Sauce, and that's super
understandable.
Smart.
Yep.
Right, 100%. 10 is where I'm at. 10 is where I'm at, where you start the conversation. Another team that's in that top 15 range, Houston. But here's my question, Jared. For whatever reason that Deebo Samuel is disgruntled, right? Let's just say it has nothing to do with usage. Let's just say it has nothing to do with money. Let's just say that he really is sick of being there for some reason. Somebody rubbed him the wrong way. Something's off. I would ask anyone out there that is listening or watching this, if you had an employer and they wanted to give you a substantial raise, but you didn't like where you were working, what's the price of your peace of mind? Okay, because I'm not going to be upset at that. If Deebo Samuel doesn't want to be here for other reasons and he feels mistreated, I'm not about to take more money to work for a jerk boss or some environment that's either toxic or just bad, right? Like, right. We don't know what's going on back there. I'm not saying this is what's happening, but if this happens to be the reason, what makes you think going to the Houston Texans is going to lend itself to more consistency or professionalism? I can list maybe 5 franchises that I would never want any part to step in their building because they are so out there with the way that they're doing things. Houston's one of them, but they had pick 13. So do the 49ers owe Deebo Samuel anything?
Pick 13 and Brandon Cooks, by the way.
Now that is intriguing. That is very intriguing. But here's the thing. If you're the 49ers, do you owe Deebo Samuel trying to get him to the best spot?
I was going to ask you that. Like, do you think they're going to try to do right by Deebo and send him somewhere? Because it's from what they're putting out there, at least from what is being fed to Schefter or what is actually happening, they are trying to paint the message like, hey, we're trying to give him all that we could give him. It's him that wants out. So I think that's kind of what they're trying to do is say like, hey, we don't owe him a damn thing. And maybe
they don't have any incentive. They don't have any incentive to send him to the Kansas City Chiefs, the Green Bay Packers, anywhere that he's going to have a chance to win right away. Because look, one, I'm not accepting anything unless it's top 12 pick, right? Those are not good football teams, okay? And that's where I value you. But it's not the same thing with what's going on with Jimmy Garoppolo. It's very clear that the 49ers, when they traded up and they got Trey Lance, that they spoke to Jimmy Garoppolo like, hey, man, we want you to be the quarterback this year, but next year we're going to work with you to try to get you somewhere that you want to go. Right. It's been whispered that Washington offered something, but Jimmy turned down Washington and the 49ers said no. But here, they owe him a little bit more in terms of that because of the way he handled it. We're watching a quarterback right now break down publicly, and I'm talking about Baker Mayfield with all of these things. Jimmy Garoppolo, say what you want, never really said a bad thing at all. And
Jimmy Garoppolo dealt with this for a full calendar year longer than Baker Mayfield did.
100%. And in a pressure spot where they were going into the playoffs and things like that, and they were winning games, and things looked bad, right? Jimmy handled this perfectly. So the 49ers are holding up their end of that bargain. Hey, we're publicly embarrassing you by getting your replacement on board, but we're not going to send you to Siberia next year. We're going to work with you and try to send you somewhere good. Now, it just didn't happen to work out that way. With Deebo Samuel, they have no sort of reason to do that. What they have to do is get the best available offer for him. And if that means you get sent to the Houston Texans, then you're going to find out that your trade request backfired on you because the grass is not greener over there. And you're not going to win games, and you're going to be stuck with a maybe quarterback. Davis Mills had a fine year. I think we all agreed he was the second best rookie quarterback. But they're year-to-year changing coaches. Lovie Smith is there to hold the job for Josh McCown. Listen to what I'm telling you right now is going on. They had a guy who actually got a lot out of them, right, last year, was a lame duck coach, fired him, because it was largely regarded that Josh McCown was who they wanted. Then Lovie Smith is brought in, and it's back-to-back black coaches. He seems like a lame duck. And then it's going to be Josh McCown. Never mind the Deshaun Watson stuff. Never mind that they traded DeAndre Hopkins for nothing. That in no way is the grass being greener on the other side. So the Jets, Houston, those are the two teams. If the 49ers move him for a late first rounder, I don't like it at all. Because one, you're sending him to a place that is going to come back to bite you one way or another. Like you send him to Green Bay, and God, I shudder to think what's going to happen with him. Right. And the Packers would take that 10 out of 10 times because if you went and Deebo Samuel was there, he's better than every receiver that is in this draft. Even though there's a bunch of guys that I like. I think it's very deep. But I don't think that there's 5 teams. I think it's like the Jets, Houston, and the Ravens. The Ravens are a sleeper.
I was just about to say that's one pick after 13, the hand in glove fit that Deebo Samuel would be in Baltimore's offense is ungodly.
And I've seen the jersey swap. Man, he looks
It
good.
looks clean, doesn't it?
Yeah. Ooh, man. Yeah, and you know what? That's a team right there. So again, top 15 range, those three teams jump out at me. Miami would have been all in on this if it wasn't for Tyreek Hill and everything. Yeah, but the Jets make a lot of sense because they were in on them. And then the 49ers can take that 10th pick and either turn it into Wilson or Jameson Williams or Olave. And that's great. That's amazing. They may never be Deebo, but those are three of the shortest shots there are in this wide receiver draft, the guys that are going to be ballers in this league. They may not be Deebo because Deebo did something that's unprecedented, but it's got to be one of those three teams. After that, everything else, I feel like you're settling and you made a rash decision. I would have dig in my heels a little bit more and see if you can get Deebo back to the table before I moved him for a later round pick.
Reports also coming out that maybe Terry McLaurin would be open to a trade. Washington's picking there at 12? Maybe a little...
Time to right your wrongs. You drafted Jalen Hurd over Terry McLaurin. Bring Terry home.
Wouldn't that be something, though? I mean, he goes to a team that now is, Carson Wentz, an upgrade over Taylor Heineke. And both teams kind of, keep an elite receiver in their room. I mean, that's another one to pay attention to, maybe as a dark horse, depending on what happens with Terry McLaurin and his extension. Yeah,
I mean, and that's the thing, too. A lot of what's going on right now is the fact that Deebo Samuel is represented by the same guys that represent DK and AJ.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't think there's a concerted effort between all three of them to see who signs first,
they're in a let's get this money group chat right now. Like this is the biggest LinkedIn money group chat in the world right now.
And they're all sitting there just like waiting for one of those guys to sign. Once one of those guys signs, okay, bet I want more. So like maybe Deebo feels disrespected because he knows what DK and AJ are getting offered. And he wasn't offered that. And those guys just are wide receivers. So, again, we don't know what's going on. I'm just speculating. But the part that everybody is kind of glossing over is that the same agent represents all of them. And it's funny. They're all coming up at the same time for money. That's why nobody's interested in doing anything.
And not to mention the fact that there's trade rumors surrounding DK Metcalf. There's starting to be a few murmurs about A.J. Brown. This is not a coincidence that all three of these guys are trying to get the same thing at the same time. I guarantee you there's a bunch of conversations going on between the three of them saying, all right, let's go get this money. It doesn't matter where it's going to be at. I mean, especially if you're DK Metcalf right now wanting to get the hell out of Seattle, wherever he ends up going. So this entire thing is going to be very fun to watch unfold, my friend.
To watch 49ers Twitter just lose it.
For the past year, that's what it's been.
But this was supposed to be the calm offseason, Jared. We went through all of this last year with the pick at 3, and this was supposed to be right after the NFC Championship loss. I am walking out of SoFi Stadium. I'm not a happy man. I know what just happened. Mm-hmm. But I also am thinking, wow, my team has a clear direction. Jimmy Garoppolo is not going to be on this team. This core is going to be here. Well, looky on April 20th, and I hope you guys are partaking on it, 49ers fans, because you're going to need it so you can calm down. Looky, Jimmy Garoppolo has a chance to still be on this team, and Deebo Samuel actually has a better chance of being traded now than Jimmy Garoppolo does. And if Jimmy Garoppolo's on this roster after Deebo Samuel, curses will be said. Chairs will be flipped over. Things will not be good.
Jason Aponte, you're one of my best friends in this. I hope you know that. I hope you know how much I love you. Where can they find your stuff?
Love you, buddy, man. Thank you for having me on. This is a blast. Yeah, Jason Aponte 2103. Jason Aponte on YouTube. Also, you can tap in with this new app that I partnered with. While I'm at the draft, while I'm hearing my whispers around, I will be sending exclusive content, which is basically its own Twitter page that just to subscribers. That's winnow.app, winno.app/Jason Aponte. Sign up there, and you will get exclusive stuff that I'm not going to be putting on Twitter in terms of things that we're hearing.
Oh, it's like an OnlyFans for NFL news, everybody. Go subscribe to that. That's something I have to look into. But appreciate you, buddy. I'll talk to you soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you, buddy.
All right. So yeah, everybody, this is going to be quite the excursion with what happens with Deebo Samuel, DK Metcalf, AJ Brown, all these guys who repped by the same people, the same agency, all wanting the same money. If you're DK Metcalf right now, he's very likely trying to get out of Seattle and the dumpster fire that organization has become in the matter of a few months. So it's not a coincidence that all of these guys are trying to get the same or similar things at the same time. And that is a good point that is being made. These guys are all going to be talking to each other. And if, Deebo Samuel is hearing what AJ Brown and DK Metcalf are at least getting offered, and he's not getting that, that's gonna upset, a guy who does a lot for, the 49ers and what he does in the offense. So it's gonna be exciting to see how all this goes. But I did want to circle back to the previous point I was making earlier, because I'm doing a piece about it for Sports Illustrated. The Carolina Panthers, to me, they are such an interesting chess piece in this, because if you're the Panthers, you need an upgrade at quarterback, and getting a weapon like Deebo Samuel is never a bad thing, especially when they have Terrence Marshall, who they're high on, Robbie Anderson as their deep threat. DJ Moore is fantastic. So if you're the Panthers, why not throw together a package with a number 6 overall pick, maybe with Christian McCaffrey in there, because he's missed the vast majority of the past 2 years. They got Chuba Hubbard right behind him. They can use Deebo as kind of this hybrid player in the backfield as well. I think that if you're the Carolina Panthers, you try to put together a package that includes a number 6 overall pick, that includes Christian McCaffrey, includes a few more draft picks, probably a defensive starter too. And I know that Jason and Brad Graham are talking about Brian Burns. Will they get Christian McCaffrey and Brian Burns? I'm probably going to guess not. But another defensive starter, I think that's reasonable. Jeremy Chin, maybe, if they wanted to put him back at safety. One of their linebackers, if they wanted to get a guy like Edor Gross-Matos. I don't think they're going to get Brian Burns on top of Christian McCaffrey. But a package deal that includes McCaffrey, number 6 overall, and a few more picks for Jimmy Garoppolo and Deebo Samuel, there's worse places to start. And look, if they wanted to throw DJ Moore in that, I think Panthers fans would be a little bit hesitant to give up 6 and DJ Moore on top of Christian McCaffrey. I mean, that'd be a lot to give up for Deebo and Jimmy Garoppolo. But number 6 would almost certainly have to be involved in the trade, just because of what they'd be giving up. Because the 49ers are going to want to at least try to replace that value. Now, if they throw DJ Moore in the trade, maybe they can throw in, a second-round pick as part of the deal, because you're getting DJ Moore, who's already quietly one of the best receivers in the league, definitely one of the best slot receivers in the league, who they can use in a variety of ways if they want to. So, yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. Again, Jeff Darlington reporting that Deebo Samuel wants out of San Francisco. And look, we're going to see what the 49ers do. In terms of do they accommodate this, first of all? And we're going to see who's going to be interested. The Jets, we know that the Jets were in on Tyreek Hill. So what's to say they don't try again with Deebo Samuel to get their guy? They've got an abundance of draft picks. They got 4 and 10. They'll probably trade number 10s, like Jay said. They're going to try to get Sauce Gardner out of Cincinnati, which great move by them to upgrade their secondary. So, if you're a 49er fan, the New York Jets are a team to pay attention to. Because first of all, Zach Wilson seemed to be coming into his own in the final 4 games of last year for the Jets. He didn't throw an interception in that stretch. And they were in on Tyreek Hill. Obviously, he goes to Miami, division rival. Maybe they go harder this time for a guy like Deebo Samuel. Maybe they really they see the guy that they want, they go out and get him. Again, the package would have to definitely include one of those top 10 picks. 10 be my guess on what it would be. And then, a few more picks, perhaps a player in there too. But the Jets are going to be, I would be very shocked if the Jets aren't calling. Plus the relationship that goes back between Robert Saleh and Kyle Shanahan, that organization. Robert Saleh, the former defensive coordinator in San Francisco. So, there's a relationship that's already there between John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan, and Robert Saleh. So that's going to be something to pay attention to. So there's going to be a lot of moving pieces. There's already been a lot of moving pieces this offseason, but of big name people. As we're in this era of the players having a lot more leverage, a lot more power. Now it is interesting here because Deebo Samuel doesn't really have a lot of leverage. The 49ers don't have to trade him. He doesn't have a 5th-year option. They can tag him twice. So in that case, Deebo can do all he wants to do. He can say he wants to trade it all he wants. 49ers don't have to do it if they don't want to. They can see how serious he is about it. They'll see if he'll sit a year like Le'Veon Bell did a few years ago. And by the way, didn't work out very well for Le'Veon Bell, did it? Which, by the way, I was very much team Le'Veon Bell for that. But it didn't really work out for Le'Veon Bell. He got paid. He got a new contract with the Jets. He was only there for, a year? That didn't work out. And then he went to Kansas City. Then he was all over the place. Baltimore for a minute. It was just everywhere Le'Veon Bell was. So that's something to take into consideration here. And like I said, DK Metcalf, AJ Brown, Deebo Samuel, all represented by the same person, same agency. They're all going to be having conversations about, okay, what are you getting offered? Okay, what are you getting offered? Okay, if you're getting offered that, then I want that. And so you're going to, whichever one of those dominoes falls first, you're going to hear a bunch of groans from the others. Like if DK Metcalf gets traded and paid, you're going to hear collective groans from Tennessee and San Francisco, especially if it's a big deal, because we know DK Metcalf's going to get big money. But whichever one of them gets paid first, the other two are going to be like, yep, I want at least that. Match that. If you don't, somebody else will. Now, I don't know how serious AJ Brown would be about holding out or requesting a trade if he doesn't get paid. But we know the Deebo is. We know the DK Metcalf is more than likely going to be out of Seattle. And after this past year, AJ Brown did have injury concerns. He was gone for a decent amount of the season. Ryan Tannehill didn't have a very good year. Yes, they went to the playoffs, but they were immediately eliminated by the Cincinnati Bengals in the divisional round. They were one and done. So, if you're AJ Brown, maybe you're a little bit hesitant about staying in Tennessee with a team that now has maybe some quarterback questions of their own. So that's something that they're going to have to pay attention to. JJ still coming in strongly. Yes, these agents do enjoy it. And look, that's their job, really. Because whatever their clients get paid, that's how they get paid. So, it's not a shock whatsoever that that's what's happening. And look, this isn't anything new. And like Jay said, the 49ers are going to try very hard to control the narrative around this. They're going to push, hey, we offered him, X amount of money. We gave him what he wanted. He said he wanted to leave. Not our fault. And that'll be the narrative that they're going to try very hard to push. And they're going to do all they can to make that known. Because they don't want to look like the bad guys. They don't want to look responsible for getting rid of the best offensive player on the team. Perhaps the best player on the team. They don't want to be the ones who are looked at as like, oh, we didn't want to do this. He wanted it, not us. And so that's a hard spot to be in if you're Jed York, Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch. When your best player says he wants out. And so they're going to do all they can to make sure that they, fan the flames a little bit. Because, that's not a situation that any GM wants to be in where their best player says, yep, I want out. No general manager wants in that spot. And so we'll have to see what comes of it. But my goodness gracious, man, this is going to be the NFL offseason. It's no such thing. The NFL doesn't sleep. So, but yeah, other than that, like I said, I'm doing a piece for it on Sports Illustrated based, around, what the Panthers would have to do, would have to give up in order to get him, or, Jimmy Garoppolo and Deebo Samuel. So that'll come out later today, probably, maybe tomorrow morning. We'll see how that goes, but we'll see. But yeah, follow me on Twitter at JBaileyNFL. I'll be talking about this until I'll be at AEW Dynamite tonight, so maybe a little break from that. I'll try to keep updating my phone throughout the break and whatnot. But so up until that show starts, I'll be, going strong on this. But yeah, piece on Sports Illustrated about this. 2 pieces on Sports Illustrated actually right now. Draft profile on Derek Stingley and what he could bring to the Bills if they do decide to maybe move up and get him. And then with another Panthers piece, if they stick with Sam Darnold, what that will entail and what their limitations will be. So all of that on Sports Illustrated right now. Go read those. You can get the link to those in my link tree, which is in my Twitter bio. So yeah, Deebo Samuel wanting traded. Everybody has their thoughts. Those were mine. Those were Jason's. Appreciate everybody tuning in again at Jay Bailey NFL for all my content. We'll do this again soon as the NFL offseason